Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. Highlands Council is pleased to bring this year's candidates for Washington's 5th Legislative District to you to answer your questions. Such an event involves many community members. 2 of us work for Highlands Council. My name is Nina Milligan, and I'm this event's producer. And Lindsey Pinkston is Issaquah Highlands Community Program Manager, and she's tonight's Chief Zoom Officer doing all of our technical work. Lindsey's advice to you is to turn your Zoom room, if you're an attendee, on speaker mode so you get the best experience. And then she also advises us that during the breakout rooms, your video must be on because it's a time to get personal and acquainted with one another, not a time to shield who you are. Now with that, I also want to introduce the volunteers that you will meet later in the breakout rooms because we have several. We had Renee Zimmerman, who will come in tonight, but she was our forum volunteer moderator in July. Tonight, we also have Chelsea Music, who is Lindsey's assistant. We have our room hosts, which include Rob Milligan, Adam Pond, Carolyn Kennedy, and John Knappenberger. Thank you all for helping us out tonight. And tonight's moderator is Nate Perea, who some of you might know from last year. He has been our moderator several times. He's well known as a public speaker and serving as Master of Ceremonies and a keynote speaker and an expert panelist for many local and regional events. He's a local boy who has also served in many public capacities for our community. Nate's role as moderator involves gathering the community's questions, following the community's interests and their concerns, and we're very glad to have Nate's expertise and his steady, fair approach to this role. With that, please help me welcome Nate. You can all put your hands up like this and say, welcome, Nate. Thank you. I turn it over to you, Nate.
All right. Well, thanks, Nina, and I appreciate you always give me such a warm welcome, and hopefully I can live up once again to your high expectations here. So we're going to get started here. We're going to hear from our candidates in the 5th District who want to represent us in Olympia this year. Before we do, though, we're going to go over a couple of ground rules and just some different information about the format for tonight. Quick reminder, ballots go out no later than the 16th, so 4 days from now. Election day is November 3rd. Ballots need to be postmarked or dropped in a ballot box by November 3rd on Tuesday. So don't forget to do that and then tell your friends. All right, so the first part of tonight, we're gonna have Q&A format like Nina mentioned. And I will be asking the candidates questions. We'll be rotating the order in which they answer. They will have 2 minutes to respond. And I do reserve the right to ask a follow-up question of the candidates with a 30-second response if I think there's more information that we need to hear from them. All of the questions that we are going to cover today are based on questions that the community submitted to us. And as Nina mentioned, part of my role is to go through those questions, make sure that we are asking as many as we can, covering as many topics as we can. But obviously we won't be able to get to all of the questions that were submitted. So definitely keep those handy for the breakout sessions if you want to ask those when we get there, or follow up with the candidates directly with their website or email. Nobody has seen these questions besides myself, and they will be, as I read them the first time anybody's heard them. I'll also be pasting them into the chat line if you want to read the questions once they've been asked and we're hearing from the candidates, and that way you can kind of remember what the question was once we get down to the later in the answers. All right, so what we'll look at here real quick before we dive into meeting the candidates is just a little bit of information about what is the 5th Legislative District, and a little bit about the makeup of Washington State. So these will be real quick just to give you some context. Lindsey, just go ahead and scroll through here. So just to give you an idea, there's 49 legislative districts in Washington State. We're in the 5th District in Issaquah. Each district, 1 senator, 2 representatives in the House. Currently, we have Lisa Callan, Bill Ramos, and Mark Mullet that hold the seats in the 5th District. So we'll hear from them here in a minute. And you can see the makeup politically of both houses in Olympia currently. So specific to the 5th Legislative District, I think it's important we just share with all of you that the 5th District is really big. It covers a large footprint. It has a lot of variety and diversity of cities that fall within the 5th District. And so as you can see, our representatives and our senator, when they're in Olympia, they're representing a very diverse group of cities, geographical footprint. You've got rural areas with farming, you've got Snoqualmie Pass, and then you've got parts of Renton and Issaquah. So very, very diverse legislative district. And so it's just kind of a good idea to get a glimpse as to who these folks represent. Okay, so let's meet our candidates here. And the first one we're going to meet today is Lisa Callan. Now, Lisa currently holds the position number 2 in the House of Representatives. She's running unopposed this year. So we're going to have Lisa give us a welcoming 2-minute statement about herself so you can get to know who she is. And then after that, we're going to have the 4 candidates who are in the competitive races stick around to actually answer the questions tonight. Then in the next race, we have for position 1, Ken Moninski, and he is a challenger to Bill Ramos, who currently holds the seat in position 1. And then on next slide, we've got candidates for the state Senate. We've got Mark Mullet, who currently holds that seat and has since 2012, and Ingrid Anderson, who's a challenger for the seat. These will be our Senate candidates for the evening. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started, and we will have Lisa Callan say a few words and let you know who she is and why she's running again. Lisa. Lisa, are you there?
I started talking before I went off mute. Sorry about that. Technical faux pas number 1. All right, thank you very much for having me tonight, and thank you, Nate, and thank you to the Highlands Council for this opportunity. And I just am humbly honored to serve as a state representative, being elected in 2018. And you know, I came to the Northwest to work for Boeing as an engineer in computer science, and have had a project management and consulting career in the computer science fields as my career. I've been a school board director for the Issaquah School Board. And now as a mom and a spouse, I also serve as a legislator, and I bring all that experience with me. And in this first term during the 2019 and 2020 sessions, you know, I worked to secure funding for making sure that we had Highway 18 expansion to make sure it's finished and widened all the way through and maintain the I-90 and 18 interchange. It was the top priority when I was on the campaign trail, and still remains so today. We passed some great environmental legislation. We made sure that college is more affordable and more accessible for many. Definitely passed many other bills around health and human services, but for me, my number 1 agenda and many of my bills that I passed were really around making sure that our children and families have what they needed to thrive and have the resources they needed when and where they needed them, and which included suicide prevention and mental health access, which is clearly an issue that we know in our communities specifically that our families are needing and wanting. I also just want to recognize that the work ahead of us is significant, and I'm committing to ensuring that we have a very strong recovery. I want to make sure that our small businesses and our cities can recover, and most importantly, that our families have what they need, again, that our education and our learning and our pocketbook and our health and our well-being are all taken care of. So if you need to reach out to me, just reach me at lisacallan.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate you being here tonight, and I would wish you good luck, but I think you're in good hands there on your race, or lack thereof. All right, so next we're going to hear from our other candidates running for the House of Representatives. We're going to hear from the incumbent Bill Ramos' first opening statement, and then from Ken Moninski. So, Bill, you are up for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you everybody for coming. Most of you know Mayor Rady. I've been around quite a while. I've lived here in the 5th District for over 30 years, and in Issaquah for over 15 of that. I'm currently a member of the Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and I've served on 3 different commissions in the city. I chaired the Human Services Commission, also on the Economic Vitality Commission and the Planning and Policy Commission. After that, I became your Issaquah City Council member and enjoyed that job tremendously, and very proud of 2 accomplishments we had there. One was obtaining the Bergsma property, And you know, it's a piece of Cougar Mountain forested hillside that was up for development that we were able to purchase and keep that in perpetuity as forested hillside. Also, affordable housing in the Issaquah Highlands, worked with a developer to get the first almost 90 units of affordable housing for sale to be built along with other development, as well as an adult family home that would be run by Leo. It's in the process. So very great pieces of accomplishments in Issaquah. Then ran for state representative in 18, and very happy to be supported by so many in this community, and I love working for you. And just to show, if you please go to my website and look how many endorsements I have, well over 100. Just to give you an idea who all's behind me. We've got teachers, firefighters, many elected officials, mayors, city council members, state level folks, environmental groups, and workers. So got a lot of people that like the work that I'm doing, trying to represent you all. My seatmate, Representative Callan, mentioned Highway 18, 990 work that we've been focusing on a lot since the beginning. You know, the construction on the actual interchange should be starting this fall.
Bill.
So,
15 seconds.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad you're taking your time to join us today, and we'll talk about some more things later.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And next, we're going to hear opening statement from Ken Moninski.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right. My name is Ken Moninski, and I'm the Republican candidate for state representative in position 1. I'm a small business owner. I lived in Maple Valley for the past 10 years with my wife and 2 children. I decided to run in this election because I wanted to offer the voters a true choice in the 5th district, and one that stands in contrast with the Ramos legislative record. I mean, we do know that Bill Ramos has voted to raise your taxes, take away local control on important issues, and make it more difficult to conduct business in Washington. I hope this evening that he will clarify his future legislative objectives or convince you that he's involved on these important issues. I want to bring balance back to state government, and I will work with anybody that supports my vision of a vibrant, growing economy, of an education system that puts children first, and of a Washington where we secure the health and safety for all citizens. I've not held elected office before, and yet I'm endorsed by the Association of Washington Business and the 3 most recent Republicans that have represented the 5th district. They know that I have the right experience and temperament to fight for your priorities. So I ask you tonight for your vote so I can bring the change that we need now to Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And moving over to the Senate race, we'll have an opening statement from, we'll start with Mark Mullet, current sitting senator from the 5th, and then we'll have Ingrid follow that.
Cool. Okay. Do I switch to speaker mode, my own thing? I don't know. Maybe I don't. I think I just stay in the corner. So my very first thing I ran for, to be honest, was Issaquah Highlands, board of, IHCA, our community association, to get on the board there and represent the neighborhood that I lived in. I moved to the Highlands back in 2006, and I enjoyed that experience, and that led me to run for the Issaquah City Council in 2009, which led to me running for the state senate in 2012. And public service, I recommend for everybody, is a great way to invest your time and energy. It's some of the most satisfying, rewarding work I think you can do in your life. In terms of things that I'm really proud of that we've accomplished, when I look at Grand Ridge Elementary School, where my 4 daughters went, when I went there and my kids did kindergarten, we had to write a check for $2,500 for them to go to full-day kindergarten. We've now paid for that through the state, so that's no longer the case. When my kids started at Grand Ridge, first and second grade, you had classes like 27, 28 kids in there. And we've now lowered class size down between 17 and 20 kids in K through 3. And the average teacher at Grand Ridge made $64,000 when I got elected, and it's over $90,000 now. So we finally are paying our teachers the fair wage they deserve for the time they put in the classroom. And in this race, I'm proud to be the one candidate in the Senate race who has bipartisan support. I've been endorsed by Republicans and Democrats, and I take that as a compliment. It's something I'm proud of because I go out of my way to try to listen to people on all sides of the aisle. And I represent communities down in Maple Valley and Black Diamond. I know it's important to them to make sure their concerns are heard. And, you know, anytime you're going to do a project in the state that involves bonds, you need bipartisan support for that project because you need 6% approval. So like when we fought to get this turf fields at Central Park and have the state help out with that, I needed Republicans to support that project. And I think that's one big advantage we have of having somebody who can work across the aisle.
15 seconds, Mark.
So,
15 seconds.
Thank you very much. I will give my time back.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mark. And wrapping up the opening statement round, we'll have Ingrid Anderson. Ingrid, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome, thank you. So thanks to everybody who took time out of your night to have another Zoom call. I'm sure that's amazing. I think it's a great opportunity we have, not just for you to hear about us, but also for us to hear about you after the forum and in the group sessions. As it was said, my name is Ingrid Anderson. I'm a mom, I'm a nurse, I'm a community advocate. I've lived in this district now for over 30 years, and I'm lucky enough to live in the house next to where I grew up and where my parents still live today. Before I became a nurse, my friend and I ran a small gift store in downtown North Bend for nearly 5 years. I later worked at my local grocery store while I put myself through college to become a nurse. I spent my years as a nurse caring for our community members in the emergency department, the psychiatric department, and I also specialize as a sexual assault nurse examiner. And I do this because I know the importance of caring for all of our community members, not just some. I know the importance of meeting people where they're at and giving them a voice when they have none. As a nurse for years, I've seen the deep structural flaws of our healthcare system. I understand what is working and what is not working. And I see the implications of good and bad policy and how it translates to the overall health of our community. I know that now more than ever, we need this experience in Olympia. I started this path when I began advocating for my patients at the bedside, and I took that experience to Olympia. I became the vice chair of the Washington State Nurses Association Political Action Committee. In this capacity, I worked with representatives to help pass legislation that addressed healthcare reform, patient advocacy, and workers' protection. Bills that addressed surprise medical billing or safe disposal of controlled substances in our community, which is such an important—
15 seconds, Ingrid.
Thank you. To protect our youth from overdoses and so much more. It's these experiences and perspectives that I'll bring with me to Olympia if you will have me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And Ingrid, you can stay ready because we're going to reverse order here now for the first round of questions. So we'll go with Ingrid, then Mark, then Ken, and then Bill. And on this first set of questions, we actually have a split topic on the questions. The reason being is we received some questions from the public that were very specific to one race and not the other. So we'll split those on this first round. So Ingrid, we're going to start with you. Several voters submitted questions wanting clarification as to why someone would run as a Democrat against another Democrat who is a two-term incumbent. You've received an endorsement from the governor and to date have benefited from nearly $800,000 from two special interest groups that at one time supported Senator Mullet, even without prior experience holding elected office. Why would you and your supporters put so much time, money, and energy to run against someone in the same party?
It's really about a different value system. It's nothing against Mark. He's a good person. It's just a different value system, a different set of experiences that I bring to the table that I feel like is not represented at this time. We currently have nobody in the state Senate who specializes in healthcare. This is a really important issue. Even before we had the pandemic, we needed somebody who understood the intricacies and the issues with access and affordability, and how we could fix that for many people in our state without even having to address the budget issues. There's a lot of work that we can do to improve our healthcare system just by legislation. So that was one of the big issues. Another issue is I think it's time that we have somebody who sees the intersection of climate crisis and our healthcare crisis. And that means somebody who will advocate for the clean fuel standard. It means somebody who will stand up for working people. I think it's really important to understand what it's like to be a family who struggles to put food on the table, who struggles to make a car payment and a mortgage payment, and is getting priced out of this district. I have not always been privileged to be a nurse. I'm very lucky now to be financially secure, but that wasn't always my story. And I worked hard, often working 2 and 3 jobs at the same time to go through school. And here I am today, and I want to help other people have those opportunities that I had, that so many people do not have the opportunity to have today. I want to help lift up our working families, support our children as they are navigating their own process in life. And now more than ever, I think we need somebody who understands the intricacies of our healthcare system to create a robust statewide plan so that we can also have a strong economic recovery. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ingrid. And now, Mark, turning to you. Your opponent, Ingrid, has been very vocal throughout this campaign about a vote you cast, stating that it was a vote against pay raises for teachers. As a result, to date, the teachers union has spent $331,000 in support of her. What would you say to teachers and voters as to why they should trust you with their vote if it is true that you have not supported pay raises for teachers?
Well, thank you very much, Nate. I think I just ask everyone to look at the facts. Like, look at what teachers at Grand Ridge Elementary School were paid when I got elected back in 2012, and look at what they get paid now. And the proof is in the pudding. And the big bill was in 2017. We had the McCleary bill, and we had to make a decision because we needed to raise state property taxes to fairly pay our teachers. And there was a lot of people who voted on the concept of paying teachers fairly, but then didn't step up and vote for that property tax to go along with the money. Without the property tax vote, you couldn't pay the teachers fairly. And I'm proud of the fact that I did both. I voted for legislation to pay them fairly, and I voted for the tax increase that was necessary to make that happen. I think the promise in that legislation was the idea that the state property tax was going up and local property taxes were going down. And that was what I voted for and supported. And the key was that there's a balance there. And the promise was, we're not going to price seniors out of their homes, because even though the state's going up, we're going to lower the local one. Well, when the 2019 session started, and they said at the very start of the session, we want to remove the cap on local property taxes, I said, no, I'm going to stick with the promise I made to the voters in the 5th legislative district, which is the state property tax will go up, but your local property tax will go down. And if you tried to raise their local property taxes, I'm going to not support that bill. And I think that's the whole reason why we've seen this huge influx of special interest money, is because they say, oh, you're not a team player, like you should be on board with this. And I'm not there to be a team player. I'm there to represent the 5th legislative district. And it was very clear to the people I represented that property taxes were a big concern for them. They did not want them going up. And the reality is, we paid our teachers fairly.
15 seconds, Mark. 15 seconds.
Our teachers right now, in our state constitution, they get a guaranteed COLA increase. And I'm proud of that legislation. And yeah, so anybody who says I've tried to cut teacher pay is just not being honest with you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We're going to transition over to Ken and Bill for the next portion of this year. Ken and Bill, your topic for this round is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we had several submissions on this topic. 2020 has become one of the most volatile years in American history when it comes to societal uproar over racial inequality and injustice. As a legislator, what actions will you take, and what are your priorities when it comes to addressing this issue here in Washington State? And we will start with Ken.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this has been a big issue. And I have a record, in my personal life of working, through Big Brothers and Big Sisters as a volunteer, and working with youth and other communities to try and, again, learn more about them and help some of them that are kind of in circumstances not of their own making. I think that one of the best things that we can do to promote equity and inclusion is to look at opportunities, and the opportunities that we're providing young people to try and move forward with their lives and become productive citizens. And I think we need to look at all areas. I'm appalled at the racial gap that exists in our public education system. I think it's atrocious, and I think that education should be one of the biggest civil rights issues that we try and tackle. And that's probably going to come through a number of different ways, including providing some alternatives to the public education system. I've also been pretty vocal about trying to reduce barriers, especially for people that may be stuck in low-income jobs, to start their own businesses, and through the lessening of licensing requirements, be able to step out into new careers and try new things. And I think it's important. I mean, if you look at the amount of time it takes to become a barber or a hairstylist in the aviation industry where I work, you can probably become a commercial airline pilot in less time. And we need to address those kinds of barriers to entry for those jobs. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Bill, same question to you.
Thank you, Nate. And, you know, as a Mexican-American kid who grew up in East Oakland, California, in the inner city, I've been working on this my whole life. It is just working on equity, social justice, and diversity and opportunities for all is just a part of my bones. It's just so into me that I just do this as part of breathing. So the point is, you look at the other party and how they're diversified. They're not. That shows where they're working. But I'm part of the Member of Color Caucus. And as part of that, I've been stepped up to ask to work on the policing policy leadership team, which has asked the members of color to help work on the issue of policing policy and how we can change those policies to make them fit better with our societal expectations of how people are treated. And that is some of the things I'm working on is accountability and transparency. We're working with groups across the aisle and on both sides, from police unions to advocacy groups. We're listening, we're sitting down. This is what the legislature is all about, working together. It's not an executive decision. You got to bring people together to get to these reforms. Listening to everybody and coming together with these objectives. Like I say, accountability, transparency I'm working on making sure that there is public access to information. So I want to work on a public database. So if you know police in your area are getting reprimanded for various things, you should be able to know that about what's happening. They're your public servants. They don't just report to everybody else. So I'm bringing people together to work on these issues, as I've done on many other issues, and getting to a solution. And then you need a lot of votes to make this happen. Again, it's not executive decision. And where are you looking for diversity? In the Democratic Party is where you'll find diversity, not in the other one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. And Bill, stay handy by your microphone there, because we're going to go now to reverse order. So we'll go with Bill, Ken, then Mark, and then Ingrid on this round. So in this round of questions here, we're going to talk a little bit about K through 12 education. The debate on if, how, and when to reopen schools is evolving daily and is an important one for Issaquah parents. What are your opinions on the efforts underway to reopen schools, and what can and should the state do in this next legislative session when it comes to a return to in-person learning and also planning for post-pandemic education? So Bill, you are up.
Great. Thank you again for that question. I know this is a concern to everybody with school-age kids in particular, and even grandkids or whatever. We know the best place for our kids to learn is in school, but we also know we need to keep them safe, and we need to keep the staff safe, the teachers safe, the bus drivers safe. There's a whole slew of people that support the school, not just the teachers. And we need to work together to make it safe and help them get educated as best they can. So I'm really proud of what's happened so far. You know, the best part about our education system is the authority is structured is with the school district. And in the 5th district, we have 5 different school districts. And across the state, we have almost 300. So they have the local authority to make those decisions on what's right for their locale and their community. And as a state, we're going to give them policy, guidance, leadership, assistance where they need those things to make those decisions and be able to move forward in the best way for our kids and for all the folks at home that they're going to go home to every day, and the folks that are helping them get that education and support. And we take care of them in many ways. Our school districts have done great things. Is it the best we've got? No. they've been working really hard to make it as good as they can. We were learning along the way, and that's as good as we got. But our teachers, I have nothing but faith in them, and that they will do the best they can by our kids, always. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ken.
Yeah, thank you. I've not been real happy with the priority given to reopening the schools, with the understanding that I know there are some children that just aren't going to be comfortable going back. Reopening the schools was not anywhere in the governor's 4-phase plan for reopening the economy, even though getting kids back to school is really going to be the linchpin to fully reopen our economy. Because if kids can't get back to school, parents aren't going to be able to go back to work full time. And we've seen a number of other districts around the country successfully reopen. Baltimore's schools reopened in the summer. They haven't had a single case of transmission of COVID. We've been months with this disease. We've opened up a number of businesses and other facilities. And the legislature, can provide the resources to the schools. We can get them the resources to open up safely. And we really need to do it. We're really letting our kids down. My own daughter, who's in the elementary school in Tahoma district, I mean, she's had nights where she's cried because she feels like she doesn't have any friends anymore. And our kids are really losing out. And when the districts, as Representative Ramos says, the districts don't really have the control because a number of them are trying to open up. And every time they do, the state puts another obstacle in their way, such as all of a sudden L&I's got to step in because they say they have to have the N95 masks. Well, that wasn't really a requirement initially from the Department of Health. So we need a real plan. We need people to come together, give the schools a real plan, and get our kids back in the classroom where we know that they're going to learn better. It's the optimum environment for them to be in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And we'll flip over to our Senate candidates here. Mark, go ahead. Same question to you.
No, I think it's a great question. This is obviously where I completely parted ways with our governor over the summer. Education is our paramount duty as a state. So to me, the argument I made this summer was we should have a special legislative session to lay out the resources we need to provide. We were given $2 billion of federal CARES Act money. I said, let's figure out what financial resources we need to provide to our local school districts so they can open in September with those youngest kids, like K through 2 or K through 3, back in school in person, with special education kids back in school in person. And I thought that was the whole reason why we need to get down to Olympia and lay out a plan so the districts can implement it successfully. And, this was, people said, oh, well, Mark, you can't come out against your own governor. He doesn't want to call a special session. Going back to that team player concept. And I'm like, the team I'm on is the 5th legislative district and the families who live in our district. And those families made it very clear to me that we should try to find some way to safely get our kids back into our school when it started in September. And I think we've kind of screwed that up at this point. I'm fairly vocal about that. Now, Representative Ramos is correct. There's locally, we can do what we can. And Tahoma, I think in our district is the closest. I talked to their school board president today, and they are tentatively still planning of having K through 2 go back next Monday. But once again, they are waiting for kind of this final approval from King County Health. And I think that's one of the things where if PPE is going to be the thing keeping these schools from reopening, that's what we could have figured out in a special session. So I think this is like priority number 1. January 11th session starts. If we have not solved this problem, we should not pass a single bill until we figure out how to start getting kids safely back into our classroom. I think it's really important.
All right, thank you, Mark. And Ingrid, wrap us up here with the same question.
This is such a good question. As the only healthcare provider here in the forum, I think I do have some experience to talk about here. And one of the facts is that nobody likes what's going on. None of us have had an easy time. We are all struggling, our students, our parents, our economy, our healthcare system. We also are learning every day about this virus. We didn't know much about it. And at some point, it would have been very cavalier to just go back. And this is an unfortunate reality that we live in. And we don't have to like it, but we need to make plans about it. And we don't need just to have a plan. We need to have plan B, plan C, and plan D, because we are constantly learning every day about these issues. And one plan is not going to suffice, because this is a dynamic, changing situation. What we do know is that we absolutely had a shortage of PPE, and that should have been addressed, because then we wouldn't have had some of the barriers that we're going through right now. However, there's still the issues of proximity in a classroom. We can only really fit, I mean, I think what I heard last was about 12 students in a class if you're properly distancing. And then you throw in young students. My son's gonna be 6 here next week. I mean, he's very good at wearing a mask, but he is 6. He will still touch his face and touch everything else. I have seen way too many people die of COVID. This is a very real, very severe thing. And while some of us are lucky and we don't get ill in a critical way, and I hope that is the case for anybody who contracts it, we still don't have great treatments. We still don't have great resources. So what we do need to do is we need to get to the table. We need to have all of the parties involved in making these decisions. We do need to have that local control, but we need the parents at the table. We need the educators at the table.
10 seconds, Ingrid.
We do this in a way that is the safest that we know how, and be adaptable if the situation changes.
And Ingrid, I'm going to take an opportunity to ask you a quick follow-up question. You have 30 seconds to reply on this. If you had been in the incumbent seat currently, would you have advocated for a special session to review how to spend the $2 billion in CARES money?
I think it would have been appropriate to have a special session, as long as it was a holistic session that looked at all aspects of how do we support our small businesses, how do we support our school systems, how do we support our economy. If it was a holistic approach, I think that would have been relevant, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Next topic, we're going to, Ingrid, you're going to lead us off. We'll go in the reverse order again. Ingrid, Mark, Ken, and Bill. This question has to do with budget and taxes. So the latest state revenue projection looks better than it did in the spring, but we're still projecting about a $4.2 billion budget shortfall through 2023, at least what I could find online. You guys may have more up-to-date data. What will be your budget priorities as the legislature addresses the budget shortfall? Will you support increase in taxes, budget cuts, or do you see any areas that we can just gain efficiencies?
Yeah, that's such an important issue that has many aspects. I wish I had, an hour to talk about that one. But the reality is that we do have a budget issue right now. And while the revenue forecast is half of what we expected it to be, we still don't know moving forward exactly where we're going to be. We don't know what kind of support we're going to get from the federal government at this time. And hopefully that helps subsidize. I know there's a lot of groups that are looking right now at where they can make their cuts, but I don't know how much that's really going to offset our deficit. What I do know is that we need to be really mindful about going in with an austerity mindset. And we do need to be very careful of not cutting our most vulnerable populations and certain services that they need, because we don't want to further set back our economic recovery. And we have seen back in 2008 that when you go in with an austerity mindset, cutting left and right, it can take longer to heal. So that's something that we need to be very mindful of. But it is likely that there will have to be cuts. And so we're going to have to be very fiscal. We're going to have to be fiscally viable, right? We need to run a budget that makes sense. Everybody at home runs their budget in a way that is not careless. And we need to do the same at the state level. Things that I refuse to cut, though, looking at healthcare, education, senior services, those things are very important to me. So I would sit down with all my colleagues in the state Senate and have to look down at the hard data when we get there. But right now, we also don't know exactly what those numbers are going to look like. So it's hard to give a concrete answer on what cuts would be most appropriate and cause the least amount of damage to our community. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, same question to you.
I think in my mind, the mistakes we made before was one of the biggest ones was higher education. The last recession, we basically left higher ed out to dry. And so we saw these double-digit tuition increases year after year, like at UW, and it got to the point where middle-class families couldn't afford it anymore. So we have lowered that back down now. We don't want to make backwards progress on that. I think the other area we have to be careful to protect is mental health, because I think kind of what Ken said, I think this COVID the kids, the parents, everyone's going through mental health crisis right now. So I feel like the last place we can cut is obviously in mental health. I think my challenge going back to this summer was when the state employees had their 3% pay raise that was due on July 1st. This was another reason I was advocating for special session. I was like, that's not the right time to give out, you know, a $300 or $400 million pay raise for our state employees when we're billions of dollars in the hole. We want to make sure we have enough money so we can protect mental health investments when we get back to Olympia in January of 2021. And so to me, that was the first place I would have prioritized, was having our state employees go without a pay increase. No one was going to get a pay cut. I think the whole goal would have been just said, hey, let's pause the pay increase that we agreed to in April of 2019 when none of this was on the radar screen at all. In terms of efficiencies going forward, 100%, there's a lot of efficiencies we can find. And the low-hanging fruit to me is you slow down the growth of government. I mean, a lot of this is just what we build in as the Washington State population increases, we naturally add a lot of headcount to government. And I think that's something we have to put on pause here for the next 2 years, which is we have to figure out how to deliver government services. Unless it's COVID related, then we obviously add, like we had to do for employment security. But you know, if it's not related to COVID, I think we have to find efficiencies so we can deliver public services with the same amount of bodies now and not just have this natural, you know, 3 to 5% growth in headcount in our state agencies.
And Mark, just a quick follow up to that then. So to clarify, when you talk about putting a pause on things, you're talking about additional or new headcount and not eliminating current positions. Is that correct?
That is, and I think, but I don't think what people realize is, like, when I got elected, we had a $34 billion budget in 2013. We had a $53 billion budget in 2019. We were budgeting a $56 billion budget in 2021. And so, you know, people have to realize if you can slow the growth of those natural things, you can actually pick up a lot of savings. So we can just get back to running our state for the same price we planned on spending in the last 2 years, we would be fine in the upcoming 2 years. So a lot of it is just stopping kind of this constant growth.
All right, we're gonna switch to Ken now. Same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty well in concert with Senator Mullet on a lot of this stuff. I mean, I think now would be the absolute worst time to try and raise taxes on an economy that is fragile. You know, it would kind of kill off the trajectory that we need to get the economy going again. I mean, we're going to have to kind of grow our way out of this deficit. And I mean, realistically, the deficit as it stands now is probably about 4% of our biennium budget. I mean, it's come down a lot and it's 4%. And that's after a 20% growth in spending between the last biennium. So, I mean, government has grown rapidly, it's grown quickly. We do need to maintain priorities like K through 12 education, healthcare, mental health. But I mean, we got to be able to find some place within this monstrosity in Olympia to get 4% cost savings out of. I mean, if we can't even do that, then there's something wrong with the people that we're sending to Olympia. So I think we can do it with some cuts. I also agree that I think the governor was incompetent by going forward with these public employee raises at a time when the deficit was going to be twice as much as we thought it was. So we can slow down the spending, get our house in order, and then talk about policies we can put in place to get this economy rolling again so that we can get people back to work and grow our way out of this deficit and start putting money aside for future use in case we encounter a repeat of this again. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. And then Bill, wrap us up here on this topic.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah, and this is really good news. I mean, that the forecast was not near as dire as what we thought it was. It's in a manageable range now. It's still a deficit, and we have to work to fix it, no doubt about that, but it's not near as dire as the original forecast. So with that, of course, we're going to look for efficiencies, right? That's always what you do with a budget, no matter what, we should be doing that. But I'm also going to make sure that our budget is human-centered, and we're not going to take things away from folks who are most vulnerable in this pandemic. We have to take care of the folks that need those resources now. It's going to cost us more in the long run if we don't, and the economic recovery will be slower if we don't do that. So we have to take care of those things first. And then as we also look, we do have a rainy day fund that we've put aside that will help us through these times as well. And I think this qualifies as a rainy day period that we can use those funds. And we already did, at the end of the last session, we did allocate about 200 million of them to do this, as we were just leaving session last year and realized there were some problems coming, and we freed some of that up already to do that. So we've got some flexibility there. I still have faith that the federal government will also get to something as well. If they do that, whether it's this month, next month, or January, that will help out as well. And all that's going to make it so that we don't have to make any of those drastic cuts to our population that needs it most. So there you have it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Okay. Our last round of questions here before we do closing statements. This topic is healthcare. Bill, we're going to start with you. We're going to go Bill, Ken, Mark, and then Ingrid. Healthcare has obviously been at the forefront of many voters' minds in 2020. Several of the voters who submitted questions want to know, what are your priorities and what actions will you take in the legislature when it comes to healthcare in our state? Bill, you're up.
Well, thank you very much again for this question. Nate, healthcare is becoming the big question for all of us. And from the federal level down to the state, we've done incredible things, adding our state resources to the Affordable Care Act, and getting, I think, over 800,000 Washingtonians with health care recently. And we need to keep that. We need to make sure everybody gets health care one way or another. There's all sorts of ways to do that. There, through your employer, through good jobs that have good benefits. There's ways to make sure that we keep equity in that access to health care, that our folks at the in the lower pay sector don't go without health care. Most of those folks are really doing the work that we need. Our essential workers, our farm workers out in the field working hard to get us food at what? A very reasonable price. We benefit from those folks that are working at lower wages. It brings savings to us. I think we can then take some of that and add to make sure we take care of them. So we need to look at that equity issue. You brought it up earlier. It never gets addressed as normally as well as it should. We're looking at that. I am particularly, everything I do, I put that equity lens on it to make sure it is working across our spectrum from, people of color, lower paid jobs, you name it. We need people to get that access to health care. It's going to be cheaper in the long run even. And that's the most amazing thing is if you take care of it early, it's like preventative versus crisis in the emergency room. It's actually cheaper for all of us and it's better for them. Who could argue against that? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And Ken, 2 minutes.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, healthcare is like the most complex system that is known to mankind, I guess, because it's kind of two things. One is access to healthcare, and the other then is who's going to pay for it. I think we're fortunate that it's over 80% of the people, they're getting healthcare through their employers. They like their healthcare. It's covering, a lot of their needs. The issue becomes then the people who are uninsured and the people who are, lower income or have pre-existing conditions that then can't find insurance. I'm personally of the opinion that Obamacare took something that was a small problem and made it a very big problem by mandating a one-size-fits-all solution. I think the only way to bring healthcare costs down so that we can provide insurance to more people is to give individuals flexibilities. For example, allowing small businesses to again come together and use their individual purchasing power collectively to buy health insurance policies. My company used to go through Association of Washington Business to do that. And then we also need to look again, it gets back to looking at fraud and waste that exists in our Medicaid program and trying to root out some of those opportunities. We seem to have far too many opportunities for people to come in and steal from our government and the taxpayers. And I think we need more attention paid to that. But the key thing is we do have to look out for the most vulnerable. We need to make sure that that safety net stays strong in that regards. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ken. Next, Mark, is your turn to address the same question.
Cool. Well, last year, we were the first state in the country to pass a public option bill at the state level. I voted for that because I thought that was kind of the next natural progression in how to try to help make sure more people have healthcare coverage. And obviously that I thought Medicare for all was too much of a stretch, but I thought the public option made a lot of sense. And I think we as a state, a mistake we make a lot of times is we pass a bill, and rather than focus all our energy on making sure that bill actually gets implemented correctly and changes people's lives in a positive way, we move on to the next idea. And what I don't want to do is spend a lot of time in Olympia talking about Medicare for all next session. I want to spend a lot of time figuring out how do we actually implement the public option bill we passed in 2019 and make it work for Washington residents in a way that meaningfully lowers their health insurance premiums. My huge priority bill back in 2014 was all on healthcare transparency. And the crux of the bill said, if you're an insurance provider in the state of Washington, this took me 2 years to pass this bill, you have to provide a tool on your website that your members can use to navigate to find out what procedure is going to cost at different locations across their community. And so whether you have Regions, Primera, Aetna, United Healthcare, it doesn't matter. If you go on your insurance website right now, you can find that tool that guides you to how much things cost. But at the end of the day, this is where we have to have some ownership in our healthcare crisis. Is if we don't take the time to make sure we're actually choosing a high quality provider that's providing at the lowest price, what's the incentive for anyone in the healthcare space to be that person? As a restaurant owner, the only reason I try to keep my prices down on my pizza is I want more customers. I want more business. If we want to reward healthcare providers who do high quality at low cost, we have to go on our insurance websites and see how much things cost and actually choose the providers that are doing just that. And I think that's a great way for us as consumers to help slow down the speed of healthcare innovation.
All right, and Ingrid, why don't you wrap it up here on this topic for us?
Again, I wish I had an hour, but I think one of the big issues that I've seen at the bedside is that sometimes there is well-meaning legislation, but it doesn't always translate to improved outcomes and viable practices of what we're actually doing to deliver care. So yeah, insurance is one of the issues. There are still a huge amount of people who do not have coverage, and we need to find ways to help deliver that in an affordable way. But one of the other big systemic issues is just because you have coverage does not mean that you actually have access to healthcare. Often there will be a provider or a specialist that you have to wait months to see if you can even get it in. Sometimes they won't take your insurance, or you have to drive hours to see somebody. And that's not reasonable for many people, especially when you're looking at our seniors or people who are struggling with mental health issues or substance use issues. There are a lot of issues that insurance does not always translate to access. And there's a lot of things that we can do at a state level. So the state manages all of our healthcare providers' licensure, at the hospital licensure. There's so many different things that we can do to incentivize providers to actually take people with state insurance. There's so many things that we can do to work with our schools to help lower some of the barriers to getting more students working in our hospitals, in our clinics. There's a lot of different things that we can do to help create access. One of the issues is that we often see a lot of people with mental health issues in our jails, and they're not there for violent offenses. They're there for minor petty things. And what kind of money are we spending for them when they're staying there 24 hours a day versus helping getting them the treatment? So there's a lot we can look at prevention too that would actually save us money,
10 seconds, Ingrid.
Help make people be more productive members of our community, and really cause a net benefit. So there's so much we can do, and having the perspective of a nurse is going to be essential at this time.
All right, thank you. And that concludes our questions for this evening. We will have some closing statements here. Just want to remind everybody who joined us that after the closing statements, we will move into our breakout sessions. So you'll be able to hop into a virtual room with one of the candidates or multiple if you want to visit multiple and get some direct interaction with the candidates in those virtual breakout rooms. So stick around for that. Closing statements. We are going to start with Ingrid, then Mark, then Ken, and then Bill to wrap it up. But Ingrid, go ahead and let us know anything else you'd like to share with the voters, things that we should know about you. And I'd like everybody to share with us your favorite TV show or movie in 2020 that you've had even like 5 minutes to watch, because I know none of you have free time these days. So weave that in there somewhere.
So before I was a candidate, I was a graduate student and working full-time at the hospital with a young son. So I don't watch TV, but I can't wait for that day to happen one day. I like romantic comedies and spy stuff. Anyway, so I just want to thank everybody for being here. I think this was a really great opportunity. I hope to hear from some of you in the breakout sessions later. The thing I just really want to reiterate is this is a different time right now. We are in a time that needs different leadership. And healthcare is really the essential component of getting us back to work, back to school, in our economic recovery. And while I am so proud at our state leaders and what they have done so far, we still have a lot of work to do. Even with a vaccine, this will still take time to determine whether people actually develop immunity and to determine how many people are willing to take it. So we have a lot that we need to plan for moving ahead. And I think my perspective and healthcare background is going to be essential at this time. One of the things I've always committed myself to is speaking truth to power, working hard, and that's something that I will bring to the state Senate as I'm trying to take on different groups like insurance companies. I want to advocate for you so that you're not paying $1,500 a month for a medication. I want to advocate for you so that we can help you find providers in your local area. I want to advocate for our community so that we can have 24-hour COVID tests for everybody, not just healthcare professionals, so that you can find out whether you are safe to return to work or not. There's a lot of different things that we can do this next session and over the next 4 years as a state senator. But I think the key paramount thing is going to be getting our healthcare and pandemic response under wraps so that we can get back to work and have as much of a normal life as we can hope to have it in this current state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. And Mark, closing statements to you. Don't forget to tell us about a TV show or movie.
So Dead to Me, which I think it was on Netflix. I don't know. Dead to Me is the one I would highly recommend. I think there's 2 seasons. Just be prepared to give up your weekend if you start watching it, because you'll get sucked in. I think there's a lot at stake statewide, I think, in this 5th legislative district Senate race. And I think what it comes down to is, are we going to leave, like I'm the last small business owner in the Senate, Democratic caucus. So Guy Plumbo was one as well. He had a dog kennel up in Maltby. He is no longer there. That leaves me with my pizza restaurant and ice cream store as the last small business owner in the Senate. Obviously, I bring a different perspective on fiscal issues, especially taxation issues in our caucus because of my life experience as a small business owner. And I think what's happened is we saw last year how there are some groups who really want more taxes, who are just like, this guy is not a team player when it comes to raising taxes, and we need to get him out. And I think that's really what's happening in this election right now is, you know, as of today, it's $1.9 million has been put in by special interest PACs, you know, in this race against me or supporting my opponent. And that's a mind-boggling sum of money when you think about it for a D-on-D race. And my lifetime voting record with Washington Conservation voters is 89%. So you're basically looking at $1.9 million saying 89% voting record is not good enough for us. You're either 100% or we will come after you and replace you. And I think that's what I hope voters in the 5th understand, is that if you want to have moderates in the legislature who work in a bipartisan manner and listen to people on both sides and try to find common ground to move legislation forward, this is your chance to get involved in this election. It's really important because we can have extremes on both sides, but we're not going to find any common ground in the middle that will actually make progress in this state. I hope voters remember that when their ballots show up on Thursday. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mark. Ken, closing statement and favorite TV show or movie.
Yeah, I discovered a new TV show on Netflix I've been watching with my girls called The Investigators, which is an Australian show about these small group of, I think, middle school children that go around and they solve cases. And it's been really entertaining, and I think it's made me long for when they're going to be able to get back to school as well. So with that, I mean, I want to thank everybody that has listened and are going to kind of leave and consider where you're going to place your trust for the future. Of course, I want to thank the Issaquah Highlands Council for putting on this event. It's so far gone off without a hitch as usual. And you know, I heard Senator Mullet talk about team players. Bill Ramos is certainly a team player when it comes to his voting record. He's voted 98% of the time with the Democrat majority. And I know he doesn't like me highlighting that, but you know, the record is what it is. And you know, when I kind of think about why that's an issue for this election, I mean, one of the things I think about is, you know, in my younger days, I was an avid kayaker. And I used to kayak, and I've kayaked in the San Juan Islands and in the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. And I learned quickly that if you only paddle in one direction, all you do is go around in circles and you never move forward. And I think government kind of works that way sometimes. And that if you continue to elect only Democrats that always paddle to the left, the legislature itself will continue to go around and around in circles. And so I'm running because I believe it's time to provide some much needed balance in Olympia, that we need a representative in the legislature that knows how to row to the right. And that way we can work together and point the ship towards a bright horizon and paddle off to a better way forward. Thank you. I invite you to check out me and my campaign at kenmoninsky.com. And I look forward to speaking with some of you in the breakout room later. Thank you again.
All right. All of a sudden, kayaking off the coast of Mexico sounds really, really nice. Okay, we're going to wrap up with Bill Ramos, 2 minutes, and favorite TV or movie.
Sorry, Seahawks. I'm at 12. That's the most important thing on TV. Thank you all very much for taking your valuable time tonight to listen to us. It's great to be with you here, and Issaquah Highlands, thank you as well for all the work you do. There's more that unites us than not. That was a motto I used in 2018, and I've lived by it ever since. And I show that by how I got a carbon sequestration bill passed year by unanimous vote. So carbon sequestration is a very partisan, controversial topic, and I worked with folks on both sides of the aisle, obviously, night and day, working through this issue to where we came up with the right answer that worked for everybody. If you want to call that a Democratic vote, you can do that. But a whole lot of Republicans voted for that too. Matter of fact, every one of them. So it was a unanimous vote, bipartisan, for carbon sequestration. That's what's working in this, in the legislature is all about. There's no executive orders in there. It's only getting 97 people to agree with you. So thank you for all of that time. Also, don't forget, I've got over 100 endorsements, starting with the Seattle Times and everybody else that's in there. Please look, that's the folks that have seen me, work with me, and know that I listen to everybody and work for solutions, and that's what's needed in the legislature. Thank you very much, and see you in the breakout room.
Thank you, Bill, and that wraps us up. So I want to thank everybody that listened through the questions, submitted questions, and all of that participation that makes this thing valuable and gets good answers from our candidates.